A Kolkata football pitch and a rural Uttar Pradesh newsroom might seem unrelated, but something striking emerges when looking at them side by side. A piece in The Hindu follows girls as they step onto a mixed-gender soccer field, using the physical lines of the pitch to outrun heavy social expectations. 1,000 miles away, Shivani Patel writes in Scroll.in about Dalit women running a journalism collective, showing how their actual presence in the field changes what a reporter is supposed to look like. Putting these stories together reveals a quiet rebellion. Marginalized women are simply showing up, using their physical presence to force open doors that society prefers to keep shut. A mid-July piece in The Hindu visits a dirt pitch in Kolkata, where a mixed-gender football team is changing the rules. The writer captures how the physical space of the field helps girls from the Kalighat red light area escape heavy social expectations. Notice how the team's very name, Marginalized Kela, reclaims a common Bengali slur, turning an insult into a demand for an equal game.
Kolkata. As the FIFA World Cup reaches its climax far from India, with stadiums packed and fans cheering their teams, a group of children in Kolkata is fighting a very different battle for their love of the same game. Their biggest opponents are not rival teams, but prejudice, social taboos, and the daily struggle to find a patch of ground to practice on. For the children of Marginalized Khela, girls and boys play together, football is less about trophies than freedom. Run by the NGO Bandhu Collective, the mixed-gender team brings together children aged between 7 and 20 from Kolkata's Kalighat red light area and nearby underprivileged neighborhoods. Boys and girls train side by side, challenging the long-held belief that football is a sport meant primarily for men. The team has around 20 members, some of whom have been playing for the past 5 years, while others joined about 3 years ago. For Chandana Mondal, who recently secured admission to a BBA course, stepping onto the field means stepping outside society's expectations. Football has become both a source of freedom and a form of self-expression for her over the years. Football has given me a sense of freedom. When I am on the field, I don't feel limited by what society expects from girls, she said. Growing up, football was seen as a boys' game. Every match we play shows that the ground belongs to us as much as anyone else. Her teammate Bandana Mondal, who has joined a women's studies program, has walked a similar path. Like many girls in the team, she balances her studies with training while navigating discouraging remarks from neighbors and the lack of safe spaces to practice. The idea behind the team was never simply to teach football. When girls from the community told us they wanted to play, they were being held back by social barriers and the difficult environment around them, said Smritiparna Sengupta, founder-secretary of Bandhu Collective. We wanted to create a space where everyone could play with dignity, regardless of gender, she added. The organization deliberately chose a mixed-gender model. Ms. Sengupta said boys from the neighborhood, inspired by watching the girls practice, wanted to join the team. They were welcomed on the condition that the team would be called Marginalized Khela, reclaiming a phrase often used as a slur in Bengali and turning it into a statement of equality and an attempt to offer a level playing field for all genders. The experiment, however, continues to face practical challenges. Access to playgrounds remains one of the biggest hurdles, Ms. Sengupta said. Public grounds are often occupied or priority is given to boys' teams. Funding, equipment, and regular coaching are constant concerns, the organizers said. Coach Piyush Haldar believes the girls' biggest challenge begins long before kickoff. Talent is not the issue, opportunity is, he said. Women players often have to overcome barriers that boys rarely face, from access to grounds to social expectations. With consistent coaching and equal opportunities, these players can compete at much higher levels, Mr. Haldar added. Finding opponents has also been difficult for the team. A few months back, the team managed to arrange a match against another women's side, but struggled to find a ground to host the game. For now, their victories are measured not only by the number of goals they score, but also by the everyday stigma they fight to stand on their own feet, question the norms taught to them, challenge society, and keep playing the game that liberates them. In the crowded urban landscape of Kolkata, where space is limited, the young children have carved out a small space of their own to claim the football field one match at a time. Published July 18, 2026, 5:56 p.m. IST.
The image that sticks from the Kolkata football pitch is the simple, physical act of stepping onto the grass. For the girls playing in Kalighat, just putting their bodies in a space traditionally reserved for boys is a rebellion against everything expected of them. Read alongside Shivani Patel's piece on the Khabar Lahariya journalists up next, that physical defiance takes on an entirely different weight. Patel writes about Dalit women in rural Uttar Pradesh doing something remarkably similar. But rather than claiming a local playground, they are walking into hostile neighborhoods and upper-caste spaces to report the news. The interesting thing is how both stories strip away abstract ideas about equality and focus entirely on physical presence. While the young footballers are fighting for the right to simply exist in public without harassment, Patel shows what happens when marginalized women use that same physical courage to claim professional authority. The reporters in Uttar Pradesh are doing more than just surviving in places society says they do not belong. They are using their presence to decide whose stolen calf actually makes the front page.
At some point in the early years of Khabar Lahariya, a story about a stolen buffalo calf made the front page. The women who put it there understood that the theft of a calf in rural UP was not a minor story dressed up as news. It was a story about inter-caste harassment, about whose losses count and who gets to decide what the public needs to investigate. The Good Reporter, a memoir of journalism in the 21st century, is a memoir about journalism built on that understanding. The book opens with a warning. This is a somewhat elliptical, unreliable autobiography of 10 very different women, it says, before you have properly settled in. The story of what this collective has done over 2 decades of rural journalism in UP has always been a better story to tell than how we have done it and keep doing it. That distinction between the what versus the how is what the entire book turns on. If you came for the rousing version, the collective has already clocked you. A collective memoir, The Good Reporter, is written by 10 women from the Khabar Lahariya collective alongside journalist and co-founder Disha Mullik, and no single voice carries it alone. It has no protagonist or narrative arc to speak of, nor a climax or a neat conclusion that ties 20 years into a tight structure. Instead, it moves inside and outside, between memory and institution, between the individual and the collective with a deliberate restlessness. It is disorienting for about 15 pages, and then it becomes the only honest way to tell this story. A memoir about collective journalism with a single hero at its center would be a contradiction. Mainstream journalism has long maintained a fantasy about what a good reporter looks like. They are detached, objective, and unencumbered by personal history or community loyalty. What this fantasy obscures is that it was always a description of a very specific kind of person. Urban, mostly upper caste, with journalism degrees, arriving in communities they do not belong to and would likely never return to. The women of Khabar Lahariya, by contrast, may not have known the difference between a member of parliament and a member of the legislative assembly when they started, but they knew who couldn't show their face in certain neighborhoods, who would not be tolerated at certain water sources, which communities felt safe and which did not. Their early training involved building on identities and status in the areas they reported from. Several of the collective's members are Dalit women, reporting from and on communities they belong to, and the journalism that resulted is inseparable from their social status. What they know is because of where they stand, not in spite of it. The body is where the book keeps returning. Fear is something these women felt in their bodies, staying awake all night, haunted by the voice that said we could never be good journalists if we felt fear. Sexual harassment in public spaces is remembered as invisibilizing yourself, the body folding inward to counter someone else's presence. And then there are the illnesses, diseases contracted through years of field reporting without access to adequate healthcare. Their bodies ended up paying a price that nobody accounted for. The book does not look away in the moments when the collective's feminist politics and its members' lived realities don't align. One of them reported critically on the Sati temple in Jari, questioning its history. She also asked for blessings every time she passed it. Another laughed at a sexist joke in the field and felt the shame of it later. A woman spent years reporting on dowry harassment while simultaneously saving up for her own relatives' dowry. These confessions are offered as evidence of something the collective understands about political life that most institutions prefer not to admit: that you can hold a feminist nazariya in your mind and still be held by older beliefs in your body. A transformation is a slow and non-linear process. A part of the whole. The chapter on institutional architecture, where the collective describes what they actually built to make this work possible, is the part of the book that stayed with me the longest. The first design principle, the most foundational, they write, is that we have put the body of the woman, in our case, the rural marginalized woman, at the heart of the organization. Her life, her needs, her fears, and her desires. What follows is a description of an organization that saw its members whole: their legal battles, their medical crises, their domestic violence cases, the tedium of accompanying a colleague through years of court dates. The word they use for this is care, but what they actually describe is labor: hard, expensive, and even thankless at times. The book is clear-eyed about the fact that not everyone in the organization bore this equally, and that as Khabar Lahariya grew and went digital, the pressures of efficiency pushed people into lonely silos in ways that sat uncomfortably against everything they had said they were building. The book does not end so much as stop. 20 years since their inception, they continue to cover stories, renegotiate their beliefs, while also acknowledging the contradictions of their own selves.
The collective asks early on whether you would allow for a narrative that liberates them from the success story, the archetypes of hero and or victim. By the time you reach the end, you understand that this was less a request and more a notice. They were always going to tell their stories on their own terms, and you were always going to lend them an eager ear. The Good Reporter, a memoir of journalism in the 21st century. Disha Mullik with Geeta Devi, Harshita Verma, Kavita Bundelkhandi, Lakshmi Sharma, Lalita, Meera Devi, Nazni Rizvi, Shyam Kali, and Sunita Prajapati. Simon & Schuster, India.
What lingers is the dust of a Kolkata football pitch and the heat of a rural newsroom. A girl laces up cleats. A woman holds up a camera. Just standing where society says someone else belongs forces the world to adjust. But wedging a heavy door open takes a toll on the hands doing the pushing. The question left to sit with is this: once the initial shock of a new face fades, does the world actually change its rules, or does it just learn to tolerate the outsider?